Now it's time to go straight onto the business news now. And the energy crisis in Europe has, of course, got far-reaching consequences. And our business editor, Charles Pellegrin, is on set with us here to tell us more about it. Charles.
Hi, Stuart. Absolutely. Pressure on Europe to adapt to these soaring energy prices really keeps increasing, especially with Russia saying it won't turn on supply of natural gas on its Nord Stream 1 pipeline until sanctions are lifted. And also because of pressure from people who are increasingly unable to make ends meet. In Leipzig, in Germany, thousands of people gathered to protest the rise in the cost of living and calling for a windfall tax on companies with excessive profits. Meanwhile, governments around the continent are presenting relief plans for households. Yinka Oyetade has the details.
They are calling time on the worsening energy crisis. Dozens of people in Italy burned their gas and electricity bills in protest of skyrocketing costs that they say they simply cannot afford.
We don't want to pay for their war and their crisis.
Beyond energy bills, we will starve to death because we won't be able to put food on the table for our sons. It's scandalous how everything has increased.
There seems to be no respite ahead after the Kremlin-controlled energy giant Gazprom announced it would indefinitely halt gas exports to Europe on Sunday. Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesperson, later saying that the halt is in response to Western sanctions slapped on Russia because of its invasion of Ukraine. As the crisis deepens, Portugal is ramping up efforts to support its citizens, with Lisbon announcing €2.4 billion worth of measures to help families cope with the rising inflation.
It has been 30 years since the last time we felt such an acute increase in the cost of living. We know very well there is no magic measure to erase the impact of a conflict. But thanks to responsible budget management, we can safely adopt this new set of measures.
The Austrian government is also giving a helping hand. The country's chancellor, Karl Nehammer, announced a price cap on Monday to help reduce energy bills. It's not clear whether this will be enough, with Austrian dependence on gas estimated at just under 50%.
Moving on now, let's take a look at how the markets are trading this hour, especially at the open in Europe. Right now, we'll see these pictures in the DAX in Frankfurt up by about 1/3%. The CAC 40 barely up, just above the 0% mark, and the FTSE in London just about the same. And mixed trading as well around the Asia-Pacific region. As you can see, the Nikkei in Tokyo closing just above the 0% mark. The Shanghai Composite up by about 1%, just over 1%, and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong finishing just stable. The Sydney ASX down by 1/3%, and this as Australia's central bank raised its cash rate by 50 points to 2.35% to restrain surging inflation. After its September policy meeting, it did, however, talk about normalizing policy, which suggests rates are getting closer to neutral. In the meantime, though, this spells more pain for Australian households in the short term. Take a listen to Australia's Treasurer, Jim Chalmers.
Once again, it isn't a surprise to anyone. The bank had flagged more increases, the markets had anticipated it, and homeowners were expecting it as well. But the fact that we knew it was coming doesn't make it any easier for people. This is tough. This will tighten the screws on family budgets. This will put more pressure on a lot of Australians who are already stretched enough.
And in spite of Western calls to curb inflation, let's take a look at some of the other business stories making headlines around the world. In spite of Western calls to curb inflation during this energy crisis, oil producer group OPEC Plus says it has agreed to cut crude supply in a bid to prop up oil prices. 100,000 barrels a day will be cut from supply in October. This reverses an earlier increase of the same amount decided last month after Joe Biden visited Jeddah. And Irish regulators have fined Instagram €405 million for violating children's privacy. This is a long-running complaint regarding minors' data, especially phone numbers and email addresses. Many children reportedly upgrade their accounts to business accounts in order to know how many profile visits they get, but they don't realize this makes more of their data available. And will Porsche get its IPO? Volkswagen, its owner says it intends to float the sports car brand in late September or early October. This would trigger what could become one of the world's largest listings, even as European stocks have fallen. Sources close to Reuters saying that this window of time where investors can express interest could be extended, or that the IPO plans as a whole can be pulled. And is it because of nostalgia? Or is it because it's cheap? Or is it because it's both? Whatever the reason, sliced white bread is trending again in the UK. British favourites Hovis and Kingsmill are flying off the shelves. Supermarket chain Waitrose has reported a 17% increase in sales in the past year. Many tying this to the rise in consumer prices in the country because of the war in Ukraine, pushing people back to basics, but also that people are searching for the comfort food of their childhoods in this different time. I don't know about you, Stuart. Is this something that you revert to when you're feeling low?
I have to say, suddenly I'm 10 years old again. That really reminds me of my childhood anyway.
A window in the British psyche there.
Exactly. White bread, Hovis, nothing like it. Charles Pellegrin with the business news for us here on France 24.